Hello everyone, welcome back to Get Over Your It. Today, before we get started on Module 2, I want us to first go over the things that we covered in Module 1. Just as a reminder, we first discussed that in order for us to be successful and to receive the maximum benefit from this particular journey, we need three things. And that's, of course, we said honesty. That's recognizing that we don't have all of the facts. 2, we need humility. That's realizing that there are going to be some things that happen in life that are beyond our control. There's nothing we can do about it. So how we choose to deal with it is up to us. And then 3, we're going to need courage. And that's the courage to make decisions and the courage to make changes in our lives. We also took the assessment to see where we are today, what things are still bothering us. We read the chapter, the first chapter in the book, Help Me, Lord. And of course, that was my particular story that I shared about a medical mishap early in my 20s as a brand new wife and mother. And we, as a group, took a look at that particular story and asked the question, what happened and what would be the things that we would say to bring encouragement because of that situation. And then we also went on to decide that everybody deals with something. Everybody has a story. Everybody has something that they're dealing with. And so for those of us who are now trying to deal with our it's, the first thing we have to do is to confront it. And in confronting our it, we said that we want to collect all of the facts. That's the who, the what, the when, the where. We leave out the question why, because that's subjective. You know, we can spend endless hours asking, why me, or why did this happen, or how could God allow this? But that does not serve our purposes in finding a way to deal with our it. We covered emotions. When we discuss our story or our incident, we want to discover how that makes us feel. And then when we looked at the emotions, we realized that emotions are the things that drive our mood. You know, that emotion can elevate it, or could cause us to feel like we're in the dumps, there's no hope. All of that is driven by emotions, and those emotions are the things that also drive our actions. We took a look at the emotions chart in our exercise, and we saw where the emotions affect our bodies, which things happen that causes headache, or what suppressed things cause us to have a deep seated ache in our pit of our belly, or in our joints. Finally, we wrote words of encouragement in our encouragement journals. And of course, I shared with you, there might be some people that will say, that's just not me. I'm not a journaler. I'm not a writer. I'm more comfortable speaking. So of course you can create now with technology your own video journal. But the main thing is that you get in the practice of saying positive things to yourself to encourage yourself. So now let us start with a prayer and we'll move on into Module 2. Dear omniscient and sovereign Lord, please help me now as I learn how to better manage my relationships. I have received a number of personal testimonies from people who've read the book and have been helped by Help to Get Over It. One particular story I can think of is a man that shared with me that his sister was murdered. His sister had been in an abusive relationship, and so she left the abuser. Her husband divorced him, moved away, but the husband vowed that if ever you leave me, if you divorce me, I'm going to kill you. His sister was found murdered, beaten to death, and this was a very difficult time for him to take, because he was the older brother. He was his sister's protector, and he felt guilt. He felt that he should have been able to do this. He should, to prevent that from happening, he should have been able to save her. And to add insult to injury, the ex-husband was not charged with the crime. They didn't have enough evidence, or whatever the story was, that the ex-brother-in-law was walking around free. When he read Help to Get Over It, he moved through the process of confronting his story, confronting his it, and recognizing that there was something he could do. He was not powerless. There were some things, as harmful and as hurtful as that was, to lose his sister in that manner. He decided that his action plan was to stay on the case, not to allow the case to go cold. So he got back in touch with the detective, and he made it his business to make certain that that case was reopened. And he shared that by taking those steps, no, it didn't bring his sister back, no, it didn't change the past, but it helped him to move forward, knowing that he was going to do his part to make certain that that young man, that ex-husband, spent time in jail. There are other stories I can share where an incident has been so horrific that the emotions that come about afterwards have ranged anywhere from anger to rage to the desire, I need to do something. I should just go find this person and do harm to him or to her. Surely I should not allow them to get away with this. But as we stated in Module 1's exercise, there comes a time that we might have to realize that the answer from moving ahead does not lie strictly within us. We might need to seek professional help, particularly if we're dealing with acute feelings of rage and we're dealing with situations that has been very traumatic and difficult to work our ways through. So there might be times that we might need to seek pastoral counseling so that we can get some spiritual help. We also might need to consult a licensed psychologist so that we can engage in narrative therapy. This really helps when we're dealing with sudden death and acute grief. We also might need a combination of these approaches, and we might even need to consult a psychiatrist when there's a need for medication. It's no shame in recognizing this is beyond my control. I'm humble enough to say I need some help. This problem is bigger than I. It's bigger than I can handle. So the very first step that we do in the midst of this, in this particular journey, is, of course, we know that we go to God for help. We go to God in prayer. We go to God seeking wisdom and solution about what we should do next. And then we have the courage. Then we're bold enough to recognize when we need to seek outside and professional help. I asked you at the end of Module 1 to read chapters 2 and 3 in the book. Chapter 2 was entitled Grudge versus Gratitude. And we look at the relationship between David and King Saul. We find their story in the Old Testament starting at chapter 17 of 1 Samuel and verse 19. The account ends, goes through several chapters, and it ends at chapter 31. In this particular chapter, we find out that Saul was the one that had the grudge. So we call him the grudge holder. And he had a grudge against David. So we call David the intended grudge recipient. The person with the grudge conjures up images of ugly, nasty behavior, ill will, spite, hate, hostility, contempt, malice, scorn, odious behavior, a mean disposition, evil-spirited. Saul had a grudge against David rooted in envy and jealousy, so much so that Saul was filled with it. He was consumed by it. In the New King James Version of the Bible, let me read what Proverbs 14:30 says. It says, a sound heart is life to the body, but envy is rottenness to the bones. And then Proverbs 27:4 says, wrath is cruel and anger a torrent, but who is able to stand before jealousy? In other words, this is so fierce, this is so horrific that it brings damage to the person that has it. That was the grudge holder. And it's also something that a person is unable to stand against. And that's David as the intended grudge recipient. So much so that we read that David had to flee for his life. And that's what we mean by he was unable to stand. Not that God was unable, or not that God wouldn't see him through it, but the solution was that he had to leave the place that he lived so that his life would be spared. Now, in this particular story, their relationship didn't start off that way. David was summoned by King Saul to come and play music for him on the harp whenever the Bible said he was troubled by an evil spirit. And so when David played the harp skillfully and beautifully before him, it would soothe King Saul, and he would calm down and he would be at peace. So initially, Saul loved David, and David had respect unto Saul because this was the king. This was whom God had anointed to be over his chosen people. We're going to talk later at the end of this lecture about music. We're going to take a short excursus there to see to share with you some tips about that. But in the meantime, let's go back to what Saul was operating in fear when he plotted against David. This fear was that Saul recognized that David was favored or now under God's protection. So the fear that Saul had was, wait a minute, what's going to happen to me now that God is for David? And the people are for David. So this caused a break in the relationship that he had with David, but it also caused a break in the relationship that he had with his daughter, because his daughter, at this point, was now married to David. So David not only was the music player for Saul, he later became Saul's son-in-law. Saul was so enraged that he tried to go to his daughter's home to have his son-in-law murdered. His daughter loved David, so of course his daughter helped David to escape. This hatred, this envy, this jealousy caused a rift and a breakdown in their relationship. He even said, see, you're for him instead of being for me. Saul was so envious and so jealous and so bent on destroying David that he pursued him. He took 3,000 men with him and he searched for him. He even found that he got help in a town that had priests. So he went there and killed 85 priests, 85 men who served God because he's trying to get to David. And not only did he kill the 85 priests, he destroyed the whole town. He killed men, women, children. He even got rid of the livestock there at that town. He wanted to wipe that place off of the face of the earth because he wanted David dead. We look at this and we see that all through the process of King Saul chasing David, that God protected him, kept him one step ahead of the trouble, and even delivered him in situations, in 2 instances, where he was close enough to touch King Saul while Saul slept, and he could have killed him. But David refused to raise his hand against God's anointed. The story ends that Saul realized that, yeah, you're right. David has done nothing to deserve death, and so I will stop pursuing him. I'll go back. Well, he would be remorseful for a while, and while he was back at the palace, and then he would get angry again and then go after him. So, in the very end, this relationship went on and on. But at the very end, Saul died a violent, painful death in battle because of this relentless grudge. David, yes, he was living in hiding, but he had his wives with him, and except for the Saul's daughter. He was having children. He had a band of loyal men around him. In other words, his life was going on. But Saul was the one who was miserable. So that we see that if you are a grudge holder, you live a torturous, unhappy, unsatisfying life, because the very thought of your intended grudge recipient out there living and enjoying his life just irks you. It torments, it vexes you. So what could have happened, David had every right to decide, you know what? I am not going to live like this. I didn't bother this man. He hates me based upon something that he perceives will happen because of the favor that's on my life. I'm going to put an end to this. I got a grudge against him now. I am going to stand my ground, or kill or be killed, or hit him before he hits me. That was not, that wasn't the approach that David took. As I said, he was the intended grudge recipient. He wasn't the grudge recipient because he treated that grudge like it was an old, stinky, nasty, smelly, foul package that someone was trying to deliver to him. Rather than taking that package and opening it up and receiving all of that filth and all of that vile, he returned it to sender, unopened, unacknowledged. I don't want this. This stinky, foul package belongs to you. In other words, this grudge is yours. You own the problem, not me. The Bible puts it this way in the New Living Translation, Deuteronomy 32 and 34. I will take revenge. I will pay them back. In due time, their feet will slip. Their day of disaster will arrive, and their destiny will overtake them. Now, here's that very same verse of Scripture in the New King James Version. It says, "Vengeance is mine, and recompense. Their foot shall slip in due time. For the day of their calamity is at hand, and the things to come hasten upon them." Now some may wonder, how does this help me? Yes, I understand that the Bible says vengeance is mine. God is going to get them back. Their time is going to come. They're going to slip or they're going to fall. How does that help me now? I want this behavior to stop now. I want them to receive their punishment now. I want them to get what's coming to them now. When will I get my chance to see them fall? But that chapter concludes by suggesting that we all take a look at Jesus. Jesus, yes, we know that Jesus, Son of God, was crucified. We know that Jesus hung on the cross. We know that he suffered, bled, and died on our behalf. And we might say to ourselves that that's Jesus. So Jesus was equipped with more than we have to deal with it. But Jesus is also an example for us. What Jesus did in the midst of the suffering was pray to the Father and said, Father, forgive them. So part of the strategy of dealing with relationship hurts, when someone does something to you, when someone brings offense your way, when someone is unkind and untrue and unloving, then the strategy is forgiveness. But it's not a kind of a thing that you can just walk in and do and say, I forgive you, and that's it. Most of the time, the closer the person is to us, or the higher we hold the person in esteem, or the greater the love or respect that we had for them, the harder it is for us to forgive them. And that's why we recognize that forgiveness is a process. I want you to go to the appendix section of your workbook, and you will see a sheet entitled Excursive in Music. And of course we know excursive is one of our key words. We're just going to, we're talking about getting over it, but music has come up twice in the story, and it's going to be very important to us in the process. Let me read you some information. Studies suggest that certain melodies can figuratively transport someone out of despair to a place of joy, peace, and tranquility. Some music even has the capacity to energize and restore confidence just by the cadence and combination of notes. According to the American Music Therapy Association, AMTA, music can diminish physical and emotional pain, decrease stress, and can facilitate empowerment. With the understanding that people have an innate responsiveness to music, research has also shown that music with a strong beat can stimulate brain waves and provide an overall sense of well-being. Music can also help to bring meaningfulness and pleasure to delight the spirit, like the soothing sound of cascading water trickling over rocks in a stream. One's mood can be influenced and sustained by sound. You can read more about how music affects us and affects our moods and our disposition in the excursive sheet that I provided for you. But for our purposes, I wanted to ask you, what are you listening to? What music are you playing? Or do you even play music? There's some people that if they're in their car, they've got talk radio on, or it's just always constantly conversation and chatter around them. Do you know how to steal away sometimes and just listen to sounds that are uplifting and that cheer you? Sometimes when people are upset and depressed, they'll play depressing music. Music that, you know, that would make you feel worse than you felt before you started playing it. I'm going to make a suggestion to you as you read the rest of the information about music and the effect it can have on your spirit. When they're dealing with patients who are dealing with terminal illnesses, chronic pain, they help treat depression, even people with learning disabilities or other people who have suffered brain injuries, people coping with depression, they have literally used music therapy for about an hour or so each day to help elevate the mood of that person. Just think, if you will, there's certain songs out there, like right now there's a song called Happy by Pharrell, and everybody's playing it. It's on TV. People are using it as the backdrop of videos that they're posting on YouTube and for ringtones and all of those things, because the music is so lively and so bubbly, it makes them happy. Find what makes you happy, or that is invigorating, or that's uplifting, or music that is soothing, or music that that just puts you in a nice place. Sometimes people, when they are in a romantic mood, they'll play music to set that stage. Remember, you can use music to set all of the stages of your life. I'll never forget my personal testimony several years back when I had a horrific fall and broke my ankle in 3 places and was in excruciating pain, had to learn to walk again. That's another story. It was a lot to deal with. But what I used to help me through that process was praise music. Music that I had it in my iPod, and I kept it on, and as I was dealing with the pain, I had music ringing in to help me move from that place of suffering to a place that I could endure it and I could get through it, and that I could also begin to have hope. So make yourself happy, make yourself joyful, find music that you enjoy through this process. Create a playlist maybe, or give yourself an opportunity to do it. And if you have some suggestions, if you've got some great music that always seems to uplift you, email me, send it to me. You have my information in your workbook packet. I'd love to share it with others, and perhaps we can put a list of songs together for this class. So I want to, before we close, remind you of the homework for our next session. Please read chapters 4 and 5. Module 3 will discuss character flaws. So if you'll read those chapters, we'll be ready to proceed. I want you to be blessed as you choose to keep going with this process of getting over your it. See you next time.